Hi, what's your name?
My name is Eric Lee Mays, but I go by Rick.
What year were you born?
1953.
How long have you lived in North Baltimore?
All the years I've attained.
What keeps you in North Baltimore?
I'm a hometown guy. I've always liked it, had a business here for many years. Grew up in this town, I love it, and I want to stay here.
So which school did you go to?
North Baltimore, Powell School and high school.
So you graduated from here too?
Yeah, 1971.
What kind of trends were popular in your youth?
Well, the biggest trends that we had in our youth was we'd go to school, and then when the weekend would come, we'd either go to the teen center or the movie theater. And now neither one of them are there, so you can't do any of those. We had fun as kids. We enjoyed candy, pop, like most of the kids do nowadays. And it was just fun just hanging out together. We tried to stay out of trouble, but most of the time we did.
What kind of entertainment was popular when you were younger?
Well, when I was younger, the biggest entertainment was going to the movies. If you could go to the movies on the weekend, you were really, cashing in. But probably at home was our TVs. And I remember when we could only get 3 channels. But my house, you could get 4 because my dad had this great big radar thing that you could turn. And if you were really lucky on a good day, you could get lineman. So we got 4 channels. And I remember when we got our first color television set. It was like, when I watched baseball games, it was like I was right at the game. In fact, I think I almost caught a foul ball one time in my living room.
What was there to do for fun when you were younger?
There was a lot of things to do, a lot more than what the kids, well, there wasn't the video games and stuff. We did stuff outside a lot. We always liked to go down to the park and different things and run around. And we had a swimming pool here in town years ago. It didn't last very long because nobody took care of it. It wasn't maintained. People would throw bottles in it and break it. But when I was younger, like when I was in my early years, like 9, 10, 11, 12, the Wixom Quarry out here outside of town, north of town, that's where I got a lot of kids hang out and swim. And not me, because I didn't swim till I was 30 years old.
What kind of stories were you told when you were younger?
Oh, I got told a lot of different stories. But growing up in a hometown like North Baltimore, you heard a lot of different stories, mostly about the railroad. But my dad, the shop that I have now, and I owned since 1984, my dad started in 1960, and he would tell me all these printer stories about like how the newspaper, we used to print the newspaper right here on Main Street downtown. And my dad worked there for several years, and I remember as a kid, I was really young, like 7 or 8 years old, less than that, maybe 6 or 7. We'd go up there and watch him print the paper, and it was really cool. Smell all the ink and big press. The press, the platen is what you put the type in. It slides across and you print. Back in the day, it was called letterpress. The platen was bigger than this table right here. And this thing would slide across the floor like this, and it would print the paper. And when it slid across the floor, you actually moved with it because it made the whole floor of the print shop, move.
So you have a print shop?
Yes, I do. Maybar Printing Service was started on December the 1st, 1960 by my parents, Barbara and William Mays. And I purchased it in 1984 on April 1st.
What major historical events have you lived through?
There's been a lot of them. Of course there was 9/11. I'll start backward. In 2001, it was, of course, 9/11. When I was really young, I think I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old, they found a cure for polio. And at that time, polio was almost like cancer. A lot of people were getting it, and it was a devastating disease that took your muscles and your walking, and eventually you would die. And Jonas Salk, S-A-L-K, was the doctor that found the cure for it. So if we can find a cure for polio, I think we can find a cure for cancer. That's what I'm hoping. Another thing I'll get to see before I go on is that we'll see major cures for major diseases. There was a lot of things happening in our town. It's grown a lot, but when I say a lot, back in the day, back in the 60s, you could go down Main Street and you could find just about any kind of store you want. Now, if you tried to go in North Baltimore today and walk down the street and buy a pair of shoes somewhere, you couldn't. They had a shoe store on Main Street. They had 3 hardware stores. They had 3 insurance stores. They had 4 banks, 4 grocery stores. It's amazing how, we have grown and we've gotten bigger as numbers, but in some ways we've went digressed because there just isn't the stores that you can buy things at anymore. And getting candy, I mean, when I was a kid, if you had a quarter, you could get a bag that big of candy and it'd last you the whole week and for a quarter. Now you can't even buy a candy bar for $1.50, so things have changed.
What big inventions came out in your youth?
Inventions. Well, probably, as I grew up, there was these games they're kind of antiquated now, they were called Atari games, and that was the first video games that they had, and people would play those for hours on end, and of course then the video games come, those kind of inventions. But major inventions, the internet, of course, that come around. The computer era, where everybody and their brother, when it first started out, didn't know what a computer was, didn't know how to run one. You go into a school or a business, and there'd be one big computer sitting there like this with a monitor about this big around and a keyboard. And that's all you do. Fax machines, that came around when I was growing up. All kinds of communication devices. When I was a kid, we used to have these what you call rotary phones. And it would be a phone that was plugged into the wall. You couldn't take it away. It had a cord on it. And to dial, you had to dial the number like this. Not like a digital phone or a smartphone like we got today. And they had in town here what they call party lines. And that would be where several people would be on the same trunk line for a phone. And if Myrtle May started talking on the phone in the morning and wanted to talk to her friend Jennifer for 2 hours, you didn't get to use the phone. When I was a kid, we had some relation that lived out in California, and every Christmas we wanted to talk to him for Christmas. And at 9 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Eve, we would call the operator and tell them the number, and then they would call us back in the evening when they had our party. It took that long from California to North Baltimore to communicate. Now you pick up a cell phone, you push, you push redial, speed dial, and you're there in 3 seconds. So that's some of the things that happen.
How has the world grown and changed throughout your life?
Well, personally, I think it's gotten worse in some ways because just so many people. When I was born, I think there was like 212 million people in the United States, and now we got like 380 million. From 212 million to 380 million, that's a over 50% increase. People are more selfish now than we were when I was growing up. People went to church and shared things. We left our doors unlocked in North Baltimore. It was a small little town. We never had to park outside our houses and lock our doors. Nobody'd ever take anything out. I remember growing up, in the front door and the back door would both be locked. But then as time progressed in these small towns, especially like North Baltimore, there was a lot of robberies going on. The drug use has gone up very bad in the last 20, 25 years. Media, I like some of the things. I like some of the changes. Like when I was a kid, if your favorite baseball team was playing in California, and say they were playing on Friday night, you wouldn't know what the score was till Monday morning or Monday afternoon when you got the paper. It took 3 or 4 days to figure, that much of. So now we have instant communication across the United States and also overseas and everything, where you flick on the TV and boom, there it is. You're watching it live or whatever. Back in the day, everything was recorded and then you show it to you in their time. Like the elections, like for the presidential elections. Sometimes you wouldn't even know who won till a day and a half to 2 days after the election if it was close. And nowadays, the night of, before midnight. So there's been good things and bad things happened since I've grown up.
How has the schooling system changed since you were in school?
Oh, well, back when I went to school, back in the day, as they say, we had respect for our teachers. We always called them Mr. or Mrs. or Miss. Never called them by their last names. Never called them any bad names or anything like that. Never swore in the schools. Did our best not to be misbehaved, because back then you could be paddled with a wooden paddle. They took that away from the schools, and I think that was the downfall of discipline. There's a lot of talking in the media nowadays about these shootings and things in the schools. It's terrible, but I think one of the things that cost us those freedoms that we had to go to school and be safe is that we took away disciplinarianism, where, you know, you're taking away people's rights if you paddle them. I think I was 9 or 10 years old when they took, we used to recite the national anthem for a flag and Lord's Prayer every morning in our classes. And it was around 1963, so I would have been 10 years old, that they took prayer out of schools. Now, let me say, when they took prayer out of schools, that meant that there was no public prayer. You couldn't publicly pray in a school. But we were always taught in Sunday school and church that if we wanted to pray silently or pray to ourselves, that was always all right, and I always did. I thought, let them try to take that away from me. How are they going to take away the fact that I can do, you know, free country, but you can't pray out loud because you might offend somebody? And that's another thing that bothers me about today. We have a great country. We live in the greatest country in the world. And people go around worrying about insulting other people. They don't want to fly the flags at their businesses because that might offend somebody. Well, I just think that's ridiculous, because by not flying it, by not standing up for our veterans, by not standing up for our country, that offends me. So that makes me want to say, you know, I don't want to go there and shop anymore, because they're doing that to appease this group of people. We want to please this group, this group, this group. This. By the time you get done, you please nobody. So I'd like to see us get back to the basics. Just get back to where we care about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, like our Constitution says, and be able to be free like we want to be.
Do you have any children or grandchildren?
Yes, I do. I have 4 children and 7 grandchildren.
Have you ever traveled out of the country?
The only place I've been outside the United States is Canada.
What do you think North Baltimore will be like in 20 years?
Hopefully, it will be a small community where people want to come and live, and our streets and all of our roads, our sidewalks, and everything will be like it used to be back in the 60s. Our streets, Main Street, several other streets in town, our sidewalks especially, businesses are all tore down. We have a lot of businesses in town that are just vacant, been sitting there for years, and the streets haven't been repaired. I'm hoping that we'll have an infrastructure that will have a lot of more building and more businesses coming to town, and hopefully better streets, and our school will be like it is now, a very good school to go to.
What do you think the world will be like in 20 years?
That's a good question. With all these things they're doing now with these cars, like Uber drivers and these this scares me to death. These cars that you're supposed to be able to get in, and they have like autopilots or auto drivers, and you're not supposed to have to drive your car, or you can set in your car and just let your car drive. So far, I think there's been 1 death reported. I personally think if you don't have control of a vehicle and you're going down the road 60, 70 miles an hour, I just don't think that's a good idea. But what I see happening in 20 years for the whole world is people leaning more, and this is what it says in the Bible, and it's kind of scary. It's because it's more people are going to go to a global type of economy where we all share money and things like that the same. And when that starts happening, young people, you got to be really careful, because that's when we're going to be getting close to, I think, the end of time.
What are your hopes for the future?
Well, I just retired a year ago, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm you mean for my future, or for the world's future?
Both.
Well, for my future, I'm retired, and I'm enjoying being able to go and see my grandkids and things, play ball, and spend more time and take places and do things with them and my kids. And of course, my kids are all adults. But for the country, for the world, I want to see us become peaceful. I want to see us be able to walk down Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. Well, I have a dream too. I have a dream that it doesn't matter how you look, what you wear, what color of skin you have, where you go to church, where you go to school. I just want to see us get along. I just want to see us be able to be friends. And I mean, we got enough problems with our foreign countries being our enemies. Why do we have to be enemies in our own civilization? So I just like to see us be a more peaceful people.
Is there anything else you want to say about like the past or now or anything?
I just love growing up in this town, and I wouldn't have traded any of the experiences I've had for anything. And I had a chance at an earlier age to live in another area, and I didn't do it, and I'm glad I didn't. Never know, maybe I would have enjoyed it more, but I just love small town living. I love knowing the people you talk to. You go into your banks and your grocery stores and different places that are still open. You know them by their first name. They think you talk to them, you know, you can fellowship with them, whereas you go to the big cities, you don't know anybody, you don't know people. So that's what I like about Baltimore, Ohio.
Okay, thanks for coming.
You're welcome.